Hey guys, I'm Bessey, and today I'm breaking down Fatal Dose.
Prepare for the fatal dose.
So every time I start a track, I always start on the drums, so let's get down to that. This is what the kick sounds like in Fatal Dose. So pretty nice and beefy. I then added this top kick to fill it out. Then I add the hat and it starts to sound a bit more chunky. So every time I do drums, I try and keep them in a specific genre. So obviously these drums are pretty crunchy, so I went for a pretty nasty clap. So I've got this, which I then layered with this one here, which together sounds like this. Then I have this offbeat shaker, which is a loop I found of like from this 90s drum pack, which then with all the other drums, and then you're pretty much getting somewhere. Just add a few tops, so I have this closed hat here. This is just a tambourine, which I put half time. Then all together it sounds like this, which is nice and beefy. I then normally create a bass line. Unless I have a singing vocal, then normally I'll go with that, but obviously with this track I'm trying to go a bit more dirty. I have this simple bass line here, which is just an 808 patch from Serum 2, which I just edited for the track. But with the kick, it sounds pretty chunky. Pretty much the track starts to flow from here because I made this in one sitting, so this is what the lead sounds like for the actual track, which is just following the bass line. So if you put the bass line with it now on the kick. The wonky synth is just a patch from a kick and bass pack in Serum. I wanted it to sound like a flute, so I edited it to sound like a flute, but obviously wanted it to not really be on key. And then we have this drop stab. So this is just from a drum and bass pack, which I then edited to fit a stab more. I then have this stab, which is in the middle of the 8 bars, so it sounds like this, which all together, that is pretty much the drop stab. I just changed the LFO on it to make it sound different. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then on the second drop, I have the stab, which sounds even bigger. So every time I do a second drop, I always try and use similar sounds, but obviously make it sound a lot bigger, so you actually have, it's worth waiting for that second drop. That sound, it sounds almost more EDM-y, like Big Room, but obviously it works in this sort of track. We then have this vocal,
Prepare for the fatal dose.
which is from a Moon Boy sample pack from the acid and bass one. So I created these chops with it, which sound like this.
Fatal dose. Fatal dose.
So I made them quite wide. So I made a preset in FL with primal tap, micro shift and delay free, which all of them basically just widen up without making it so delayed, which is a signature on most of my tracks, which you'll notice on the EP as well. We have this other vocal, which is a chop from a splice sample, I believe, which is for the build, which sounds like this. In the build, you'll notice a prominent riser, which is this. Which is a preset of a West Coast type lead. So if you know, like Dr. Dre type leads, I basically just extended it and pitched it up because I thought it sounded really cool and wonky. So the lead sounds like it's almost you're driving through a tunnel, which I really like, especially for the build, because you're basically teasing what's coming in the drop without giving too much away of that lead, which is a very big deal when I do my tracks. We then have this mosquito type riser. Weird and wonky, as all the other sounds are. We then have this drum fill. It's a big prominent sound before the drop, so I have it like this, which then goes with this little ding sound, like you've almost just microwaved something. So then together it sounds like this. And then before the drop.
Prepare for the fatal dose.
So yeah, then it all works together. We have a few like white noise effects, which go along with the riser. just something simple. So we have the snare build, which is a 909 snare, which is just swinging with the shaker loop, if you remember that. So then that's just getting louder and louder as time goes. Basically with that snare build, with a lot of my snare builds, I try and change the velocity as the track goes on. So then it basically actually feels like it's just getting louder and louder. So then when you're on a big sound system, it sounds like you're getting really close to the drop. It would sound huge in a club. When you're listening on a big speaker, you'll notice the difference. And then I have this other snare, which is an 808 snare, which is following that snare build in the second drop to make it feel even bigger. Which you put that with the 909 and it sounds like this. I then have this reverb clap, which I use for all my transitions. I use this in almost all my tracks now, as it's just the best way to transition in my opinion. Which obviously in the track would sound like this. So now we have all the parts, now let's actually glue them all together. So for all my side chaining, I normally use Kickstart, but for this track I ended up using Shaper Box just to get the kick and the bass to be exact. And because when it's an 808, it's a bit more release, which is normally a struggle to get sorted. But the side chain is the exact length of the kick, as I use Shaper Box on my kick as well. So for the drop sound, I have not too much on the mixer, but the main crucial two plugins I use is Fruity Fast Distortion, which adds extra grit, adds a bit of white noise actually as well, and then I have this Valhalla Vintage Verb, which without both of them sounds like this. Pretty dry, but add the Fast Distort and it sounds a bit more gritty. And then with the reverb, which will add a lot more grittiness to the drop. There's a lot of automations in this track that make it what it is, but there's some crucial automations that I think if I didn't have them, the track wouldn't sound as clean. Here's some crucial automations in the second drop that I think actually make the bass face stay on. We have this lead. So on the second drop, I altered that wonky lead to sound more wider. But then when I go into the second 8 bars of that second drop, this is what I do. Because I've opened up the release, it almost sounds like I'm pitching it back down because of how wonky it is, which works perfect for the lower end of the lead. But that lead there is the exact same as a wonky lead. I've just opened up the cutoff. So the last crucial automations that I use in this track for the vocal build up in the second drop. So this is what the vocal build sounds like. So as you can hear, there's a lot of automation going on there. So let me break it down for you. So we have this Fruity Delay 2. All I'm doing is opening up the ping pong, so it's going left and right, and then just phasing up the actual level of the mix for the automation. If I turn all these plugins off and I'll do them individually, let's add the delay now and see what that would sound like. We then have an Endless Smile, which is on 75%. So let's add that in now and let's see what that looks like. Now we have the build. We also have this Fast Distortion, which I also use, so it distorts as the time moves. Which adds a lot of grit. And then I also have this automation of just a basic EQ of a high pass filter going up. So one last thing is on the mix down. So every time I do a mix down, the kick's always at most loudest level. When I use a drum bus, I actually turn it up a little bit with a limiter. I always put it at normally 0.8 to 1.2 dB which in this one I did 1.1, and then I always add a decapitator, which just adds so much extra grit to the drums. So that's always in my drum bus. I pretty much use the same drum bus for every single track. In terms of levels, I normally just train by ear. There's no perfect level you can really get, but I don't worry about being in the red line or anything like that, because sometimes it sounds even better when it's clipped. But I normally just chuck a limiter on while I'm making music, just so I don't have to really worry about if it's clipping or anything, and then you can just figure that out after. As really the masters, not really something I ever worry about. I normally just care about the mix, get the mix perfect, and then you can really worry about getting that master even beefier if you need to. Sometimes, at least for this track, I didn't even master it, I just used the limiter, because you don't actually need mastering all the time, I think. Yeah, so that's pretty much the track. There's a lot of automations that make that track. There's not too many sounds going on, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I appreciate you guys watching this. So here's the final track.
Prepare for the fatal dose.
This track is out now on Night Bass, so go stream it with the link below.